So, school used to be simple. You show up, you do some work, you get a grade. The grade usually reflects the work you did or didn't do, depending on the situation, and you call it a day, right? That's a pretty simple system. You show up, you do work, you get a grade, you call it a day, you get up to do it again the next day. Well, not under an anti-racist philosophy, because in an anti-racist philosophy in which systemic racism is everywhere, and in order to root out systemic racism, we have to completely overturn all of our systems. Grading in public schools is now racist. Because of course it is. And we're going to start with a school district that we've actually talked about relatively recently. In fact, I did a video on Chris Rufo's investigation into the San Diego Unified School District forcing teachers to attend a white privilege training just a few short weeks ago. We talked about how they were doing that. Well, guess what they're doing now? They're making grades an anti-racist initiative. District officials in San Diego evidently believe that the practice of grading students based on average scores is racist. From Reason.com. K through 12 students in large public school districts across the country spent much of the fall semester at home in a less than ideal result of the COVID-19 pandemic, but Zoom learning was hardly the only significant change to the education system. Some school districts are embracing trendy but dubious ideas about how to fight racism in the classroom. The San Diego Unified School District, for instance, moved this fall to abolish its traditional grading system. Students will still receive letter grades, but they won't reflect average scores on papers, quizzes, and tests. Under the new system, pupils will not be penalized for failing to complete assignments or even show up for class, and teachers will give them extra opportunities to demonstrate their mastery of subjects. What constitutes mastery is not quite clear, but grades shall not be influenced by behavior or factors that directly measure students' knowledge and skills in the content area. Let's just read that bit again, just because. What constitutes mastery is not quite clear, but grades shall not be influenced by behavior or factors that directly measure students' knowledge and skills in the content area. They're not grading them based on their knowledge of the subject. Am I living on Mars? What in the holy hell happened? District officials evidently believe that the practice of grading students based on average scores is racist, and that anti-racism demands a learning environment free of the pressures to turn in assignments at any time. Because you guys know, we know back when the Smithsonian talked about it, or over the summer, that adhering to schedules and timelines is a white supremacist ideology, and we can't possibly expect people who are not white to adhere to schedules and timelines. That's not, okay, for those who might be new on the channel, that's not what I think. That's literally what the Smithsonian put in their museums. That I'm not making that up. Go back, there's a video about it on this channel. These are incredibly racist ideas that are being disguised as anti-racism. As evidence for the urgency of these changes, the district released data showing that minority students received more D's and F's than white students. Just 7% of whites received failing grades compared to 23% of Native Americans, 23% of Hispanics, and 20% of Black students. So apparently, the solution to this is to hold everyone to a lower standard. That is incredibly racist. What that says is that the school district, the literal school district, does not believe that Native Americans, Hispanics, and Black students are capable of stepping up and doing exactly the same thing that their white students are doing. And I don't believe that's true. I believe that everyone is capable of stepping up and doing hard work. Do they probably need extra tutoring? Sure. Do they probably need extra help outside the classroom? Sure. Guess what? I bet those 7% of white students that are failing could probably use that as well. Why aren't we directing resources that I'm guessing are probably limited because it's a school district and they always say they have limited resources? Why aren't we directing those resources to helping all of those students achieve instead of eliminating grades based on someone's mastery of the content area? This is part of our honest reckoning. As a school district, Vice President Richard Barrera told a local NBC affiliate, if we're actually going to be an anti-racist school district, we have to confront practices like this that have gone on for years and years, like grading. These changes to San Diego's school grading system are an excellent example of the bureaucracy citing a noble-sounding goal. Who could be against anti-racism to justify a policy that doesn't address the issue whatsoever? Yes, thank you, Reason.com. After all, eliminating these kinds of grades won't eliminate the underlying inequities that produce the disparate failure rates. It may actually cover those inequities up. Given that grades are a tool for evaluating students' progress, the district is essentially announcing that it will no longer gather evidence as it could about negative social phenomenon it would presumably like to fix. Because showing that we're anti-racist through actual actions that fix the problem is not as good a solution as making a virtue signal about being anti-racist and covering up that a problem even exists in the first place. Better grades do not mean students will suddenly have a better grasp of the material. As it turns out, they certainly won't be better prepared for college, where traditional grades are very much a thing, at least for now. But lest you think that the San Diego Unified School District is the only place where we're about to start seeing anti-racist gradings, I give you this column in Educational Leadership. Turn and talk. Anti-racist grading starts with you, from this guy, Cornelius Minor. Now, we're going to overlook the fact that he has a really cool name, because Cornelius is a really cool name. I'm a big fan, but these ideas are crazy. How can grading practices support students who fall behind during the recent closures? First, I want to challenge the assumption that your question about the term fall behind is a social construct. No, wrong. Falling behind in class is not actually a social construct when we're talking about grades. This idea of where a person should be is not a naturally occurring thing. We know from child development psychologist Jean Paget that all people develop differently and grow at different places. Well, that's generally true, except that generally speaking, people need to demonstrate a mastery of a certain subject in order to move on to the next level of that subject. Let's see. Let's go down a little bit. Is there such a thing as anti-racist grading? Absolutely. But again, I want to be very careful, because one thing that's happening right now is that people almost always want an anti-racist activity playbook. You can't say I've adopted these 3 anti-racist grading policies and now I'm anti-racist. Anti-racism is addressing the ideologies that govern schools. There absolutely is such a thing as anti-racist grading, but it starts with me examining the biases that I bring into school and the discriminatory ideologies and structures that leads to the type of pedagogy I engage in. It's about me disrupting the very curriculum that I teach, and then it gets to the grading. Think of the grading as the output. If your programming is bad, if your programming code is bad, the output of the program will be bad. Okay, so let's think about this in regards to the San Diego Unified School District, because the first thing they did was white fragility training for all their teachers, where they separated out the white teachers, and the white teachers had to confess their inherent racism. That actually happened. There's a video about it on this channel. You can also look at Chris Rufo's reporting on the topic. So if I'm framing that in terms of this, what the San Diego Unified School District, with that initial training, what they did with that is they forced the teachers to, where did he say? Anti-racism is addressing the ideologies that govern school. There is absolutely such a thing as anti-racist grading, but here it is. But it starts with me examining the biases that I bring into the school and the discriminatory ideologies and structures that lead to the pedagogy I engage in. San Diego School District, you did that first with that white fragility training, and now they're going on to change their grading practices. They're literally following this dude's playbook. How would doing the inner work change grading practices? One thing we understand from Universal Design for Learning is that there are multiple ways a kid can express their knowing. And so if you know 2 + 2 = 4, oh, James Lindsay's favorite example, one way you can express your knowing is by writing it. Another way you can express your knowing is by discussing it. A third way is by creating a model that shows it. A fourth way is by illustrating it. And a fifth way is by performing a play. I don't remember many plays in my math classes, but okay. But in too many schools, only one way is considered legitimate. Dude, when you get out into the working world, as it turns out, people are going to tell you to do things a certain way. And if you go into an office meeting and you say, I want to put on a play to discuss the marketing strategy that I'm proposing, you're going to look like a moron. So if you write it, you get an A, and that's it. There might be 100 kids in the school who know 2 + 2 = 4, but if only 2 of those kids can write it, then only 2 of those kids will receive A's. This is profoundly discriminatory. Although he's not actually making the argument that this is discriminatory based on race. Is there evidence that people of certain races don't know how to write 2 + 2 = 4? And how racist is it to assume that people don't know how to do that purely based on the color of their skin? If the ultimate goal is more equitable grading, where can teachers start? If I were to give teachers a starter kit, it would be to examine the ideologies that bring you into classrooms, the bad code, to repeat the computer metaphor. 3 particularly pernicious ideologies show up in grading. The first is the ideology of show no. That's the false belief that if a second grader walked into my classroom, there would be certain things she should know. Rather, it's our job as teachers to discern what students do know and then move them forward. So again, he's literally making the argument for eliminating grades, where teachers are the sole arbiter of what students do know and move them forward based on their intuition about what students do know rather than a demonstration of the students knowing that. That's absolutely insane. The second thing I would eliminate is the ideology of transactional gratitude. Oh, the SJWs, they love to attack the idea of gratitude. I'm gonna do another video about that at some point, but they love to attack this idea of gratitude. They do it all the time. In most academic spaces, there is a silent pact that teachers make with students. I will agree to teach you well if you demonstrate to me that you are thankful for it. And if you do not demonstrate to me that you are thankful for it, I will withhold quality teaching from you. I don't... Okay, I would love to see the data on which he's actually basing that assumption, but I don't really think that matters in the land of anti-racist grading. A teacher will be in the lounge and say something like, you know, I've done everything I can to make sure that McKibben kid understands how to add, but all she does is yell. She's not thankful, so I'm not doing it no more. The fact that a teacher is saying I'm not doing it no more is probably problematic in itself, but I digress. Or, can you believe I stayed after school for 2 hours to help Sarah with her essay and she didn't turn it in? I mean, frankly, I'd be pretty pissed about that too. Listen, I used to do adjuncting work for different colleges, and I stopped adjuncting because students weren't, they didn't care about learning, honestly. And these were mostly white students, you anti-racist teachers out there. These were mostly white students who I would go out of my way for. I would try to explain concepts. They didn't care. They just wanted me to give them the easy A and call it a day. So I stopped adjuncting because of it. So I absolutely understand the frustration. If people don't want to learn, I don't know. I was not born to be a teacher. Let's just say that. We expect students to show up with gratitude because we do our jobs. Yes, students should be thankful for the opportunity, particularly when their teachers are going above and beyond. Now, that's not always the case. I mean, listen, students need to be taught about gratitude. This is not something that a lot of them, well, if we were in our natural state without adults screwing up students constantly, then they probably would be more appreciative. But listen, as kids get older, they get more screwed up because more bad things happen to them in the world. That's a different topic for a different day. But it's not necessarily the students' fault that they don't know how to show up with gratitude, is the point I'm trying to make. The third is the ideology of deservedness. Even though grading is about proficiency, it often gets conflated with behavior. If you can have a student who is proficient at calculus, but if the teacher doesn't like the fact that they are consistently late to class, that student gets marked down. Dude, what this guy is talking about is crappy teachers. This honestly seems to be his point with all this, because this is not anti-racist or equitable grading. What he's literally talking about in this FAQ is dealing with crappy teachers. That is what it is. Guess what, guys? Eliminating grades from your classroom isn't going to help you deal with the crappy teachers. The crappy teachers are still going to be crappy regardless of whether they are delivering grades or not. Anyway, I'm sure we're going to see more coming on this type of thing in 2021 because the schools are going to be the primary battlefield for all of the woke nonsense. So get ready for it, guys. Make sure you know what your kids are learning. It's really, really necessary. All right, speaking of that, folks, just a reminder that I do content almost every single day about news, politics, culture, a lot of this woke stuff, critical theory stuff, social justice stuff. That's really a big focus of mine. If you enjoy the content I'm putting out, please consider subscribing to the channel, turning on notifications, giving the video a thumbs up to let YouTube know you like it, and they'll be able to recommend maybe some more of my content based on those nice little thumbs up. I really appreciate it. It really helps me out. That's all I've got for right now. I'll see you soon.